ways similar, but in a lot of ways very different. Glad to have 6 returning players that have some idea what I'm talking about at this time of year, but we still have a few guys that in our freshman group that are figuring it out. Pleased with our exhibition against Queens, especially from a defensive standpoint. I think, you know, I tried to say this a couple times last year. A lot of people want to talk about my motion offense or how we play offensively, but really, if you look at how I coach and my teams that I've coached since I've been a head coach, defense is really more of, I don't know if you want to say the area that I emphasize, but certainly I think you win with defense, and so we're, like most teams, a little further along defensively than offensively, and that's, offense is always a process. But defensively, I thought we played well against Queens, and we need to continue to do that here early on as our offense is still trying to figure it out.
Can you give an early take on your freshmen? I guess normally an exhibition wouldn't be that important, but I'm guessing it's pretty important to get an idea of how they handle it.
Yeah, it was good for them to play the amount of minutes that they did. Everybody got 15 plus, I think, and it was good for them to get a little game experience. You know, they all have certain strengths and some things they do well, and then there's some things that are a real struggle for them. And you know, TJ has been one of our better, you know, defensive guys, and for the freshman, I don't think he played as well defensively as we would have liked. But that's part of the reason why he'll have an opportunity to maybe play a little more than some of the guys. I think defensively he's further along. KJ McDaniel is a terrific athlete. I mean, you saw that in the exhibition. He's going to have some dunks that are just out of this world, but he's still learning how to be a complete player. You know, he has a lot of things that he needs to learn, but his athletic tools are high, and so we think he's got a very good ceiling. And the faster that he absorbs everything, the more he'll play, but he certainly has the tools to play some as a freshman. I think Bernard Sullivan is maybe started a little slower than I would have thought, but I think he's picked it up here the last few days. I thought he had a good practice yesterday, and you know, some of it he tries so hard that sometimes I think he's guilty of overthinking right now, which, you know, is probably a criticism of our style or a challenge of our style, is that there's a lot more probably thinking than some of the way other people play. And so I think for freshmen to integrate into our system and understand it and play well early is more difficult. And a lot of times they are thinking instead of just playing and reacting. And until they get comfortable, it's hard to be as good as you can be. And I think you see that in some of our freshmen. And we've got to, you know, try to do a good job of keeping some things as simple as we can, but also moving at a pace with the older guys that we need to move to be successful. And you know, you see that a little bit with Bernard, but I think he's slowly figuring some things out. I've seen good improvement in both ends with him over the last couple of days. I feel like he's closer to starting to make some good strides. Rod Hall does a really good job in our jammer role, pressuring the ball in the full court, and you know, has a pretty good feel for the game. And so from that standpoint, that's helped him, I think, play. And I thought he did some good things against Queens. He's big and strong physically, so that's not a problem. Offensively, he's a very good passer and has good poise, especially feeding the post. And so that's helped him play and will help him in the future. Devin Coleman is probably a little bit further behind right now defensively. And then offensively, just, you know, we want him to continue to work to be a guy that thinks of himself as a scorer and a shooter. And, you know, that's hard for a freshman to come in with that mentality maybe. And so he's just kind of feeling all of that out right now. I think he's made some improvements, especially defensively. I thought he was probably the guy that was the furthest behind after doing some things with the team early on, and he started to make some improvements, but they all still have a long way to go along those lines. I hope you were asking about, wanting me to go in depth about every freshman. If not, I'm sure somebody was going to ask. So.
Have you ever been in a situation where literally half your roster was true freshmen?
You know, I don't think so. I have a bad memory when it comes to like remembering certain things. You know, like teams, and I'll have assistants that I've either coached with now or, you know, have been with me a long time. Lucas, my video guy, who's been with me for a while, that'll remind me of things, and I just, till he reminds me, I can't remember them. But I don't think I've had a team with this many new kids, and it's been a challenge. It's a real challenge because the older guys, you know, the older guys have gotten into things. They pick things up. Hey, you know, they understand what we're talking about. You know, they still have, they need to get back to their good habits that we worked all the way to in February of last year in March. And when you're off for 6 months, you might lose some of those good habits. But once we get, you know, we work with them a little bit, those guys, they can get back to where they need to be. And offensively, they still have a good feel for offense and motion, but now the roles have changed. And so now they're being asked to make more plays. They're being asked to be ready to come off a screen and make a play, as opposed to maybe just catching it, looking inside for Jure, or, you know, setting a screen and DeMontez is catching it and driving and playing off DeMontez's drives. Now we've got to try to develop other guys to become, those are our two best offensive players. And so now we've got to try to make some other guys those guys. And so it's finding out how they can be successful in our motion offense and how they can get their shots. What are the best ways for us to get them the ball in positions where they can be successful? And when you're being played by teams that pressure, how do you do it when you're being played by teams that play soft? You know, all the different things. Queens played very soft, and you know, and sometimes our post guys got a little too content with just catching the ball off the block. And so we've got to, you know, those are things that you've got to work to really master and get better at, and that takes time, even for the older guys. But they have a good feel of what we're trying to do, and now you go to the freshmen that have no feel, and you're trying to coach so many different things that it can become frustrating for the older guys because we're not moving as fast as we need to be. It can become frustrating for the coaches because we need to move faster, and we can't get as fast as we need to because we have so many new guys. You know, last year the great thing was we only had one kid, and I've said this a couple times, we had one freshman who, you know, he was only going to play 10 minutes, so it really wasn't going to affect our season or our team that much. Whether he could figure it out or not. If he didn't figure it out, he didn't play, no big deal. Guard the ball and you'll get 4 or 5 minutes each half and then you're out. That's really all you have to do. You know, we need some of these freshmen to do more than that, and, you know, some of them aren't quite ready for all of that yet. And it's coming. It's coming. I think they've done some good things, but the older guys are waiting around for that sometimes, and we really need to keep the pace moving sometimes. And so there's a balance there that is very challenging with this year's team, right on, especially early on.
Is TJ the guy that's you feel it's the most complete both offensively, defensively, given the start you gave him starting day?
Yeah, probably. I would say he's further along than the other guys, and you know, there's opportunity there because DeMontez left too. I mean, there's, you know, at the other spots there's more. I mean, Andre Young's at the point guard spot, Tanner Smith, 2-year starter, you know, Milton, Devin, Bobo. So, I mean, in all honesty, he also is in the best spot. He and Devin Coleman are in the best spot to have a chance to maybe start. You know, we've looked at Brian and Tanner, and they may start. They may have some times when they start. They'll certainly be on the floor together at times. But I also think there are some things there that aren't as good for our team when those two are, you know, your 2 and your 3, people who into all those numbers. You're not quite as fast. You know, maybe you don't have as much speed. You don't have quite as much ball handling. You know, the great thing about Brian is he's a guy you can play in multiple spots, and Brian has a good sense about how to play a couple different positions. And so his versatility helps, and that's one of the things I like about bringing him off the bench.
Last year, you kind of had things click in maybe in mid-December, that Florida State game, I think Trevor said. Do you feel like you have enough veteran experience back that can happen earlier, or are there so many rookies that maybe you're concerned that you might have those same kind of struggles in November, so to speak?
I think the struggles early, I think there could be more struggles. It'd be more challenging for us early now because we'll have more young guys playing who haven't played Division I basketball. And again, because our older guys last year had so much experience and positive experience, they'd won some games, and you know, they weren't going to get rattled if we didn't play well in the first half, or they weren't going to get rattled if, you know, where we played. It was just us getting to be where we would play our best. And, you know, we struggled with some things internally last year with roles and accepting roles for a while and not understanding why coach maybe wants us to do this or that. And that, you know, they love the freedom that you give them, but at the same time, you know, it can't always be equal opportunity. I'm going to give you all freedom to go in different places and move and cut and pass and play different ways, but at the same time, we can't all take 8 shots. You know, there's games when Jure needed to take 12 shots and DeMontez 12 shots. And then there might be games when Devin or, you know, somebody else took more shots. But, you know, that was part of the things that we were struggling with last year and had to kind of fight through and figure out each game what was the best way for us to play and to attack and do things. You know, now it's more of some of those ancillary things, new first game for kids, new first time on the road, bigger environments. Those are a little more challenging, and we're going to be doing it with kids that aren't maybe used to being in those environments. So it'll be a little more challenging, I think, this year, to be honest with you.
Other than a victory this coming Friday night, what would you be looking to get out of the game?
You know, just daily improvement is really where we focus. You know, I just want us to be a little bit better. I know it's all cliche and coach speak, but really at this stage, like, teams at this stage of the year are so much different than they are 2 months from now. At least you hope they are. You hope your team's improving through practice and all those kinds of things. And, you know, I think when you watch all these early games and early season tournaments and the way things happen, guys aren't really familiar with who to play, when to play, what rotations are the best. You're still trying to figure out who plays well with whom and versus what kind of defense maybe, who's better against zone, who's better against man. When you don't have experienced teams back and you have turnover, those are the things that you're trying to juggle. And, you know, again, I've said this before, like, we don't have spring practice. You know, we don't get 30 practices or whatever it is and all the things that sometimes football is allowed to make it a little easier. We don't have kids that redshirt very often, you know, and then are kind of used to your system. So the true freshmen in college basketball are just that. They're true freshmen. And you've got to balance the egos with the older players, younger guys, everybody kind of managing and being on the same page. And there's just so many things to juggle. So I just want to see our team make improvements. Like offensively, in watching the tape, we weren't as bad as I thought we were during the game. During the game, I didn't think we were very good offensively. When I watched the film, hey, we were better than I thought we were. But we need to be better, I know, to be a good team. And so I'd like to see some better offensive execution and maintain our defensive discipline and intensity.
Brad, when Oliver brought in Bubba, it was kind of like, well, he's my project player.
Mm-hmm.
3 years later now, is that project player developing? Is he going to play?
I think so. I thought he gave us good minutes against Queens. You know, he's stronger. He's more confident. He's better. His skills are better. His understanding of the game is better. He's still not the most physical guy. And again, it's hard to make a guy nasty. It just is. And Bobo's just not that type of player. Now, when you make him mad, he can get angry and he can come at you a little bit. But, you know, it's funny and in workouts, many times we hit him with pads and did things to make him angry. I mean, you know, but at the end of the day, he doesn't wake up every day and walk into the gym like nasty. And I wish he did, because in all honesty, I think that's the one thing that he's missing, to be really consistent. Because I think he's at the point now where his skills are good enough, his hands are good enough, his body is good enough, his knowledge is good enough that he can be a good player. And I still think he can be and will be. Hopefully he just gets more confidence as the year goes on. And as he gets more confident, he does become a little more nasty. Because when you are comfortable out there and when you're confident, you're not as worried about what somebody's doing to you. And you're more able to land the first punch, or, you know, be the guy that delivers the first blow. And really, in post play, that's a lot of what it is who delivers the first blow. There's a little space that we're both going to fight for when the ball comes here. And is the defense going to get it, or am I going to get it for better position? And he's got to get comfortable and confident enough that he wants to deliver the blow to get it in positions where he scores. If he can catch the ball in deep post positions, he might be as good as anybody on our team at finishing, because of his size and because of the way he's worked with his skills. So I think he's going to help us.
Is he a 10-minute or a 15-minute kind of guy?
I'm hoping the longer the season goes, the more he plays, you know. And I think some of it will be dictated by games. I think there'll be some games where it may be hard for him to play because of the style of the other team, maybe defensively. But then I think there'll be other games that will be good for him.
He talked a little bit about, before practice started, about the China trip this summer, and how basically it was just a free-for-all. They didn't call any fouls, and he thought that was actually good for him, because evidently things did get kind of nasty.
Sure.
I mean, do you think that was a good experience?
Absolutely. It was good for him for a lot of ways. I mean, we wanted Bobo to do that because he needed game experience. You know, there's nothing to take away from. You can practice and you can play in practice and you can work on individual skills like we've done with Bobo for a long time. In the last fall, all spring, this fall, he's in there with Coach Wienecke, myself, maybe one other guy, sometimes just us three. Sometimes we even have another coach in there. And that's really good, and that makes you better, and that makes your skills better. But then you got to go out onto a court with 9 other players, and you got to be able to get things done. And you got to know when to do some of the things that we're working with you to do. And that's where the trip was really good for him, to be counted on, to make plays in game situations. And you know, unfortunately, he really hasn't had that through 3 years. He really hasn't had much game experience, and so that experience was good for him.
How much of a challenge, you guys have some trips going to Arizona, going to Iowa, even the Citadel. How much of a challenge is going on the road as much as you guys do and playing the schedule you have with the freshman?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, you know, those are good games, and you know, but we need to play some games like that to prepare us for ACC, because the league's, you know, going to be challenging. The environments I've talked about, that's one of the things in coming to this level. Winning on the road is very difficult because of the venues. Teams are good, but it's just more difficult. Teams play better at home, and so we need to put ourselves in some difficult environments. We need to put ourselves in some places where, you know, we need to perform, and we need to perform in areas that are a little bit hostile. And you know, you got to travel, and you got to do different things to get used to a different routine, and so those games will be good for us. And you know, we needed those, and obviously we scheduled those with those in mind.
Tanner said that you've really encouraged he and Andre to sort of be more vocal in terms of taking leadership of the team. How have they sort of come along in that regard?
You know what? Kids have to lead their own ways, and Tanner, Brian, and Andre have all three tried to be good leaders as seniors. Not that Bobo, you know, Bobo's got enough on his plate that he needs to just worry about Bobo. And so I've kind of told Bobo that. Just be encouraging with the young guys. Bobo plays with them on the second team a lot of days, and so, hey, just try not to don't get too frustrated when they struggle with some things. But the other three guys I've really challenged to lead, and they lead differently. Andre is a great player. He's a tremendous kid. He's just not an overly vocal kid. And I wish I could make him more vocal. We're trying to make him more vocal. I think it would help him both as a player and a leader. But he just prefers to lead by example. And I mean, he's a great leader that way. He comes in and he works as hard as anybody, knows what to do. He's competitive. he gets extra shots. I mean, he does the things you need to do to be a good player, and that's one of the reasons why he's made himself into a very good player. Tanner's obviously more outgoing, you know, more comfortable talking. You know, he talked a little bit last year, but now I think, you know, I've just tried to give him the freedom to feel like, hey, some of these huddles, like these are your huddles. What people don't understand is like when you have those free throw huddles, and there's a lot of positive communication, there's a lot of direction that can be done in those. Like we're on a defensive free throw huddle, and it's like, all right, are we set up for our press attack? Could they press us here? Are you guys thinking press attack? I got the ball out, get to your spot, you know, we're running 15, whatever it is. Like there's communication that's leadership, it's direction, it's more than just like, you know, hey, you're okay, or hang in there, coaches, you know, he's just trying to toughen you up. And there's times when that's all good, but there's also like leadership and providing direction for your team. And Tanner has the IQ, he has the confidence, and he has the personality to do that. Brian's more of just energy, positive reinforcement, hang in there. I mean, and it's good because you need all different kinds of leaders to help your team because different guys respond to different things. But Brian's energy and positive reinforcement has been really good. He also pulls guys aside a lot, all those guys do, and tell them, hey, you know, we're coaching so many things during practice that those guys sometimes can pull a kid aside and need to pull kids aside and tell them when they didn't guard something the right way. We can't stop practice and explain every single time, hey, your ball screen, you didn't get your chest to the sideline, whatever it is. And those guys have done a good job of that. And each lead a little differently, but I think they're really trying, and I think they enjoy the role. I don't think in their careers they've ever done it. And, you know, but that's trial by error also.
Was it DeMontez that was sort of in charge of those puddles last year?
He was. And, you know, Tanner helped a little bit in some of that. But he certainly was a guy that was, you know, DeMontez was also very fiery and very competitive, and you fed off of his passion. And, you know, he was a really good player as much for that as for all the other things. And sometimes those are overlooked. Your competitive passion and fire and how, you know, your will to win is really important, I think, in terms of how successful kids are. And not wavering, not losing your confidence when you play poorly for a half, or you go to a difficult environment and you don't question whether you should be good or whether you should play well, expecting to win. I think as DeMontez, I would assume as he got older, that was there. You know, but that starts in some kids when they're younger, and that's the hard part of evaluating and recruiting. You don't know. Unfortunately, we don't get to know the kids as well because of all the rules sometimes. We don't get to know them as well as we'd like. And you don't know all those things about them, and that's why some kids develop better. Some kids maybe don't. It takes them longer to get comfortable and to have that competitive fire and confidence.
You talked a little bit at the end of last season about challenging Andre to find new ways to get a shot or make shots for himself. Talk a little bit about what you want to see him do. I mean, obviously he can catch it outside.
I mean, he's our best shooter, no question. He's one of the best shooters in our league. We've got to make sure, and it's not easy, you know, he's going to might be the top of the scouting report this year. And he's going to have to move more. He's going to have to change directions on his cuts. That's something you know, in fact, in the scrimmage, or I'm sorry, the exhibition against Queens, I didn't think he did a very good job. I thought he missed scoring opportunities because in motion you can run around and run off screens, but if a team is really paying attention to you, they're going to put somebody right next to you if you're the best player, and they're just going to follow you around. They're not going to help. That guy's going to stay on the best player, and that's your job. Shut him down. And the whole Hoosiers line of, like, you know, what kind of gun does he have, and then it was Denton coach or whatever it is, you know. So you've got to do more things, and we've got to do things to help him. Our guys got to do good things in terms of screening, but Andre's got to be patient. He's got to execute off screens better. And last year it was easier for Andre to have some days when he got shots because there was emphasis on DeMontez, there was emphasis on Jure. It'll be more difficult for him to find shots, and we've got to continue to work to make that happen. And then we're going to have to find some other guys that want to shoot the ball more. I keep encouraging Tanner. I need Tanner to take more shots, to be more aggressive. You know, think of himself as more of a primary scorer, putting pressure on defenses. And those are things in terms of roles and being comfortable with that. You can talk to kids about that, but until they do it like that, that takes time. And hopefully that's going to happen sooner rather than later.
Is there any kind of mystique about, so as a basketball coach, mystique about coaching 7-footers? There used to be, you know, going back, of course now everybody's
Smaller.
6'8" point guards now and stuff. Or is it just a taller guy than everybody else?
You know, I think I haven't had very many guys that size. I had like a kid at Wilmington who was 6'11", I think. So I haven't had a lot of experience coaching 7-foot guys. Like to have a little more. But anyway, I think you know, you have to find out about the kids. Like some big kids start playing just because they were tall, you know, and maybe they aren't. Their nature isn't to be nasty, you know, and so that's fine. But you got to appeal to them in a different way and coach them in a way. You understand it, appreciate. Don't just look at what they can't do. Look at what they can do, and make sure that you don't coach them so much in a way that you want them to be this warrior mentality 7-foot guy that should just dunk on everybody. And that's not what they do. That's not their mentality. But now, like Bobo's got some good skills. He can make a 8-foot jump hook, and make sure that you play and coach them in a way that tries to give them some confidence. You still have to challenge them to their weaknesses. And that's not really different whether it's a kid who's 7 foot tall or 6 foot tall. But I think there are some, you know, there are some things with being taller that are different. In fact, Coach Winecki, who was a very good player at Richmond, he not 7 foot, he was 6'8", but he reminds me every once in a while. He said, you know, Coach, like in 8th grade, I was terrible. Like I was terrible in 8th grade, and I slowly developed. And he goes, my freshman year, I didn't play much at Richmond. We had a good team. I didn't play much. He goes, now that summer between my freshman and sophomore year, I worked on my game religiously, my left hand. And, you know, he made himself into an all-conference player. And so he, you know, he firmly believes, you know, the development factor is there if kids want it. But with big kids, a lot of times because of a little awkward, some kids don't like being tall. There's some things there that, you know, things that you view as positive, people that are shorter view as positive. Man, it'd be great to be that big and have this big persona and personality, but they really don't. They almost view it as a negative. And so now you've got to get inside them and build that confidence back up. And I think that's part of maybe what the challenge is, as much as just, you know, the skills and all those kinds of things.
More, people always expect more.
Absolutely.
From those guys.
Absolutely.
And then they're going through those growth spurts.
You know, that's exactly right. And the other thing, I think it's the same for like Devin Booker and Milt Jennings and Bernard Sullivan. You know, you want these 6'8", 6'9" guys to come in as freshmen and play and be really good right away. But at the end of the day, that's the most physical part of the game. And they're going up, they're 18 and they're going up against 21 and 22-year-old men that have 25 pounds on them and a lot of experience. And they just, that's more difficult than being a little guard out there that's just handling the ball and running around cutting and nobody really ever touches you. Mm-hmm. You know, there's no physicality. You're not afraid for your... Now, when there's a rebound and there's a big old guy and he's trying to put his forearm in your throat, like, hey, there's some times when it's not that fun to, like, get down there and work on that in practice. Like, that's, you know, you guys are over there dribbling. That's good. You know, we're over here, like, beating on each other. I mean, you know, and to be honest, that's the hard part for big guys. It just takes longer. It takes longer for them to get comfortable. It takes long. You know, it's like playing when you play with older men. Like, guys don't have to be, it's like old man, I always say old man strength. When I goof around with our players every once in a while, and I'll hold on to them and do little things to them to put a hand on a hip and like hold them. And like, there's like an old man strength that older guys have. You don't have to be as fast, as athletic, but you've got old man strength and knowledge. Pretty powerful. Pretty powerful. And for big guys, that's the part that's important. More, you can try that old man strength, but you can't catch that 6-foot guard. That old man strength that doesn't help you any. You know, that's where you see your age. I just can't do it anymore. Like those guys are. Maybe I can hang with these guys around the basket because they're not moving as fast. You know, but that's the difference.
What have you seen from